computer. Okay. Okay, so I would say welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. So our program, when I'm looking for speakers for our IONS programs, I've been looking for people who have scientific research, personal experiences, and knowledge that help us anticipate what expanded consciousness may be like. People who are offering practices and modalities that help us personally to expand our consciousness and raise our vibration, and people who've raised their ordinary work in the world to a new level. Tonight's program is an organization that's teaching a personal practice, an organization or a group that we could participate in that teaches a practice that offers the possibility of enhanced self-awareness to move us beyond where we are to where we'd like to be by practicing being present. So we invite you to learn about Be Present and the Be Present Empowerment Model. And it's being presented to us tonight by our core panel, Victoria Clevenger, who's our own member, Lauri, Leaverton, and Nancy Thurston. And so their mission is to create a more compassionate, thriving, and sustainable world, which we all want. So I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, and thank you all for being here.
Well, thank you very much. I really love being here. Dottie was part of the Be Present when we first started in the Pacific Northwest. It's a national organization out of Atlanta, but we have different regions that we're organized in. So to reconnect with Dottie is really wonderful. And of course, Victoria is on our core leadership team, the core group here in the Portland area. And then also I was just talking to some folks this morning. We had a leadership development meeting this morning, and several of the people we were talking about coming here, they were very excited to know we were coming here, and partly because back in like 2014, 2015, we were at Earthrise, which is the IONS retreat center. It's closed now, north of San Francisco. Have any of you been to that retreat center? A beautiful retreat center. So we were met and we're in contact with a lot of the folks from IONS up there. So anyway, I just find it providential that we're here together again, and I'm grateful for that. So why I'm here on this particular call. So I've been in this work for 21 years with Be Present. I went for one weekend. I was going to go and learn everything I needed to learn in one weekend. That was my plan. What brought me to the work back then was that I was in a cross-class Bible study where we were looking at the radical words of Jesus around money and how money should flow in the world and all the things we don't do in this particular culture. And I realized what was happening in me is that in that cross-class group, I was beginning to feel like I should keep my mouth shut as a white, wealthy person. When I know in the culture, too often wealthy folks can take up a lot of space, can really take a lot of power. I didn't want to do that. But I also knew that if I had to silence myself, then I couldn't do anything in the work that I wanted to do. I knew that was crazy. And I knew there had to be a way to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. So that's what made me on the search to find out how in the world can you work across all these differences in a way that everybody gets to show up. That's what I was trying to find out. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about what we're going to do this evening, but we had a fascinating conversation last night as we were talking among the three of us around being here today. And I was going to share a little bit I was sharing with them about what I wanted to say. And I was nervous about saying that I'm a wealthy person and a Christian, because those are both hot topics in this world and people have a lot of assumptions about that. And so part of what we do in Be Present is how each of us get to show what's true for ourselves and be honest about the fullness of ourselves, all those different identities. We all have a lot of different identities. So how to really be able to be honest about that. So one of the things that we're inviting you into, just having listened to me talk about white, wealthy, and Christian, just for me, what were your first impressions? You don't have to say anything now, but I mean, what images came in your head when you heard that I was a wealthy person or that I was a Christian person? Because what we know is that as we're trying to bridge all these, the differences and the places in our culture that have divided us so seriously, we need to be start paying attention to what happens, what categories do we put people in, what assumptions do we make, is it a positive or negative thing? So just, we're inviting you tonight, and really for the rest of your lives, to begin to really consciously notice those places where the culture has been very careful to divide us, and how those divides have worked their way into our cells and into our thinking when we listen to each other. So just, that was an interesting conversation about working with the model at the same time we were preparing to be with you all today. So what I want to do is just right now, just give a quick sweep of what we're going to talk about. Lauri and Victoria are going to introduce themselves also here in just a minute. And then I'm going to share a little bit about this movement of the Be Present, where it started from, what the origin story was, and how where we are today, and a little bit about the process that we use all the way through the organization to make sure that we are showing up clear and clean in ourselves, and also can build the bridges with other folks. So that's going to be the flow of the evening. Lauri or Victoria, do you want to just give an introduction of yourself? Maybe Victoria, you want to go next?
Yeah.
Since you're right next to me.
Yeah. So we thought we would share with you how long at this point, how long we've been with the movement and what drew us. And so for me, back in, I think, 2016, a friend of mine who I had met, because we were both volunteer mediators, but we had shared a lot in several years earlier, but I hadn't heard from her in a while. And she called me and invited me to be part of a support group for this organization, Be Present. And Be Present is the name of an organization. Wow, that's something I've been trying to do my whole life. What is it? How do you do it? So anyway, I was intrigued. I was flattered that she wanted me to do that. And so she invited another person who was, I had worked with on other social justice things. We all shared a passion for social justice. And so, and then a couple other people joined our support group. So we didn't really know what we were doing exactly, but fortunately, the way Be Present works is it had at that time quarterly meetings called leadership development meetings, where we get support in being a support group. So Nancy was facilitating those. And even though I enjoyed the conversations I had with my support group members, like I said, we didn't really understand enough. But when I went to these leadership development meetings, I really loved the conversations that we had there. And I love learning conversations. I love conversations in which people are honest and authentic and focused on increasing their own self-awareness and awareness of how we can better the world. So I really found that there. And so I can say, I didn't want to join anything either, but I just got drawn in the more I could understand what was happening and what the depth of insight and awareness was, and the kind of learning conversations that I could start to have with more people, because there was a common desire to know ourselves better. And so I have taught conflict resolution and communication pretty much all my professional life. So I knew about change only happening in the moment, but that had eluded me. I knew a lot of knowledge about stuff, but to bring it into the moment when I needed it was not easy. And I could see that Be Present was talking about that. How do I be present with the fullness of who I am instead of being habitually knee-jerk triggered? So that's enough for now. Can I just say, I saw Darlene's chat. We will be talking about the support group, Darlene. That's a great question, but we will be talking about that.
I'm Lauri, and Nancy and I have been friends since the 5th grade. And in adulthood, we drifted apart geographically and came back together. And the last 20 years or so, she's been talked about Be Present, was very involved in Be Present. And to me, I thought it meant learning how to live in the moment, which is part of it. But I got so curious about what it was and saw how much Nancy had internalized and moved with it, that I went to a conference in 2018. And when I didn't know anybody but her.
Oops. Technology.
And it has been,
You just froze, Laurie, just so you know. We missed just a little bit there. You're
oh,
fine now.
oh dear, it says my internet connection is unstable. Uh-oh. Well, I've never seen that before. Of course, it would happen now. But I spent 3 days at this conference, just blown away by what I observed about the children were so free and uninhibited and wise, and the adults were so open, and it just was. I've never been around a group of people that treated each other that way, or where there was such ease in the community to be who we were. And so I got hooked, and I've been more and more involved as time has gone on, and I'm on the board now, and just really believe that this model is changing the world. It's changing the world one person at a time. So I keep coming back because I feel so nurtured, and I trust the people that I'm involved with to a degree that I have, rarely trusted people before. And really, I've learned how to trust myself. And to know who I am. I was pretty much frozen when I came in, emotionally and spiritually. And I just feel like I have just been coming to life more and more the last 5 or 6 years. My relationships have changed, and I'm just really grateful to be here and to have the chance to share this with you all.
So that's us. And just a second, Dottie, we're going to show a video, just a little snippet from a video here in just a minute, but I wanted to give just a little bit of introduction before we do that. This is kind of partly to bring in both the founder. Lily Allen is the founder. This was started by one Black woman over 40 years ago, who really began to notice what was happening to her. She definitely is a bright spirit. She was a bright spirit as a kid. She definitely knew who she was. And she ended up going to, first of all Black school. She wanted a college. She wanted to go to a college where there were people that were like her. And what did she find? Diversity. She was too dark. She was too short. She was all the labels that people put on you. They're put on you not just by people who are very different, but also by us, by people who look a lot like us. And she went to get her master's degree at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And so very mixed, more white. And she also noticed all of a sudden she's picking up more and more of those labels that people were putting on her. And she was beginning to act out of them and begin to question herself. So she knew she couldn't keep living like that she needed to find a way back to herself outside of what anybody thought of her, outside of all the roles that she played. She wanted to find out who she was, and then how to be in relationship with other people to really listen to them. So we're going to talk more about that whole process of that process we're going to talk about more, but we wanted you to just hear a little snippet, both from Lily Allen, she's the first person who speaks, and then from some other folks as they reflect on what this work has been to them. So this is just a couple of minutes of the video for now. You want to share that first part there, Dottie? Yeah.
Present moments are the best possibility for change to happen. So let's write that down. Present moments are the best possibility for the change to happen. That's so real. And yet, those moments where you are present are harder to get because it's so influenced with so much in that moment.
Part of my challenge is trusting and sitting back enough to see what the next thing out of people's mouths is, so that I don't have to go based on my assumptions, but I can see how very different the reality is from whatever might be going on in my head, and even learning how to stop the stuff in my head.
The question, which is, when you're holding this model in a facilitation room, people who don't know what the model looks like, part of it is a temptation to actually model the model, just being present and silent. What's interesting about be present is that there's not this big gap between facilitation and being a member, so that there's not a like, okay, I'm a facilitator, nothing is supposed to happen to me.
And I think the best way for me to change the world is starting with ourselves. The world will get better. Each one that we change, the world will get better. So this is, I feel this is incredible contribution to a really, truly changing the world, because it's for basis coming from inside ourselves, you know, and that one nobody can take it away from us.
I think that history is playing more of a role in me showing up and participating than I realized.
But this is a new moment, so. And this is a new moment.
Yes.
And this is a new moment. Right?
Wow. Right? Yeah. If you understand where you are, it helps really create a different moment, which means that you can still have any past memories or anything right here present, including what you are learning. But if you have to still know how you are in it, because that's the influence of what changes the action to that moment.
Speakerphone. Thank you. One of the things I forgot to say is if people have questions, and I know here at the beginning, there's a lot of questions. But I'm just saying, if you need to if you have a question that you need to ask, or if you have, even if something's coming up, feel free to stop and ask that. But I want to give a little bit of the history now. And one of the, actually, the mission of Be Present is it builds transformative leadership for social justice. So that's really what our mission is, to build sustainable leadership for social justice. And what we know is living in a culture where these divides have been built so strongly around race, class, gender, age, ableism, sexuality, all the different places that we have very sophisticatedly divided us up. How do we, and those values and those thoughts and those actions work their way into us, even when they are in direct opposition to our hearts. I mean, you know that's true when sometimes when your actions, it's like, where did that come from? I'm not a person who, whatever it is that we just did, that is, so the sophistication of how our both self-esteem is crumbled down, our view of each other, our trust, like with between men and women. There's a lot of different places in the culture that has been very careful about dividing us. And like I said, and then working our way like shards in our bodies. And what Be Present is working to do is to help us first love ourselves enough that we can actually see and own up when some of those behaviors come out that are not in alignment with our heart, and actually shift that behavior. That's what we're trying to do, because the piece that I love about organizationally, and also what it's teaching each of us to do, is how to really begin to align our hearts and our values with our actions. But with this stuff from the culture that's set in us, that's not always easy to do. And that's what Lily was talking about, that the present moment is a moment when particularly when we're stressed, is a moment we have a choice of going with whatever it is, our old patterns, our old ruts, how we know how to do it and feel safe and makes us feel unafraid, or whatever it is that is our place, or to try something different, to really step out of some of those old patterns in a way that's really much more connecting and much more aligned with our hearts. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the organization, because it really is a history of how we have been, both starting with Lily, starting with one person, then how through the organization we've been really working at what it means to more and more align our behavior with our hearts, and then to be able to listen to each other across our differences in the present moment without saying, oh, you sound just like my father. You sound like every white man I've ever heard. Those places where you put people in boxes, how to listen in a way that's much more present and conscious in that kind of way. So like I said, this organization started with one person, one Black woman, who really asked herself, how can I be my true self, the full, wild, bold, unique, true self that's me, in this culture that only sees me as a white woman who's oppressed and poor and has kids, and all those labels that were put on her, that she began to think that way in her head, that she began to forget the fullness of who she was. And she knew there's no way she could live in this culture that way, and no way she wanted to raise her children in the culture that way. So she, on her own, really found ways, and this is the model that we're going to be talking about a little bit later, to how to begin to remember who she was and to know where she was in the moment, outside of all those labels, all those supposed tos, all those assumptions of other people. And also to hear everybody in the present moment and not bring back her history, things that actually happened to her that were really very, very hurtful across race and class, particularly, and gender, where she could actually be with someone to hear and see them as their own unique person, not pull, because you know how we can pull 40 years of patriarchy into the guy that's standing right in front of us. That's not fair. To how to really be able to hear people in the moment for who they are and see their spirit. And what's even harder is to see their spirit even when stuff comes out of their mouth that's horrifying. Because even we've done things we've said and done that are really not in alignment with the spirit. We want people to remember who we are and not just see us for what we did in that worst moment. So how to remember the spirit of each other so that we're supporting each other of what it means to come out of the clasp and the seduction of this culture, so that we can support each other for what it means to get back in our hearts. That's not an easy process, which is why the community of trust is important, because it doesn't feel good when all of a sudden we've done something that is out of alignment with ourselves. We need support to remember we are good people. I really do have a big heart. I really do care about justice, even though what I just did was perhaps unjust and unfair and disrespectful. And I have to look at that so I can shift my behavior. So Lily was working with all of those pieces. And 40 years ago, there was the first national conference of Black women's health that happened in Spelman College, just outside of Atlanta. And in that, she gathered and invited Black women and girls. So she was starting with people that her people who were like her, so Black women and girls, And they didn't start with their oppression. So often that's how Black women are seen. They're oppressed, they're poor, but she wanted to see people outside of their oppression. So her opening question was, what is it you adore about yourself? Now think about asking that question for yourself. That's not where we typically start in this culture. But she asked those women and girls, what is it you adore about yourself? And honestly, it took years before they had any language for that. There was often wailing and dancing and all of the that had been put on them, where it made it very, very hard for them to know the beauty of the heart of their spirit. But that was the question that she started with. But the other piece that was really important at the very early, it's been all the way through, is that all ages are all together. Because what we're having to do is to unlearn everything we learned as children about not being listened to and what you needed to do and all those kind of boxes that we were put in. At Be Present, we start very, very young, and the children are with us all the time. And what we know is the wisdom that comes from children, if they're actually seen and honored, just like the wisdom that can come from each and every one of us, it's important that we're all together, that we all are enriched by the span of age, the diversity of all of us, but also the age difference. And also, can you imagine what it would have been like as children to hear adults actually honestly speaking about what is true for them and what they're trying to shift, and see their movement in a very honest and clear way? That gift that comes from the children to the adults is there from both directions. So the work began with Black women and girls. And when they felt like they had enough, well, first of all, after that conference, they were sent home to go meet the support groups that, Darlene, I think you were asking about the support groups. They were sent home to go find 1 or 2 or 3 other women or girls to get together and actually begin to work those places in yourself that you knew are not in alignment with your heart and what you want to be. Those places where you get stuck, those places where you get in self-judgment, those places where you get in judgment of other people, to have a place to really speak and what I call babble my way around until I can see what it is that keeps getting caught, that keeps my behavior out of alignment with what I want to do. So they were sent back to come in small groups to really begin to look inwardly at themselves for where that culture, which they knew was unjust and they were fighting to change, was inside them also. So the work was to go home in support groups to really work on yourself and your own leadership, and then also to organize regionally. So that's what Victoria and Lauri and I are part of the regional organizing core group. The women 40 years ago, they started to do that from the very beginning, way before we became an organization. And then once the Black women and girls felt solid enough in their selves, at least enough of them felt solid enough in themselves, that they were willing to sit with white women and other women of color to begin to open this up and do the practice together. And that was a very good friend of mine who's actually my co-chair at the Vision-Based Social Change Fund Development Team. That's the piece that my work at Be Present, we're the co-chairs together. When the white women were just about to come in, her thing was, no, do not let those white women come in. They're going to take over. You know, when white women come in, that's what she did not want that to happen. And right now we're in a deep partnership together. So she's been on her own journey of what it meant to be open to the fact that, yes, historically, it's true. There's a lot of injustice and taking over that happens sometimes when you bring white women into a group of Black women. But that's not what we're doing here. So in 1988, there was a gathering, an 18-month gathering, kind of like I had at Ions, not too many years ago, at the Earthrise, where the Black women and girls came with white women, and a lot of them were like white mothers of mixed race girls, or other women in the social justice movement who were friends of some of the Black women. So they gathered together for 18 months to really explore what would this look like once we've opened up to white women. And then later on, it opened up to men and boys. So right now it includes absolutely everybody. And part of the vision was, if we're going to be in the world together, we need to know how to be in groups together. And that diversity is where we really learn how it is that we can build those relationships that are sustainable and effective and don't get destroyed the first second conflict comes in. So that's been the vision of the Be Present from the very beginning, is to include everyone. And at this moment, it does include everyone. And in 1992 is when they actually incorporated. So for 9 years, it was done as a movement, but everything, the fundraising, the organizing, the how we work together was already established by the time we incorporated in 1992. And so that's the history of the sweep of the organization. Let's see what else I want to say. I think that's enough. And then just for our own history here in the Pacific Northwest, we started about 2015 organizing, and we've been meeting ever since. So we're one of the 4 regions where folks meet regionally around for Be Present. So that's the sweep. I don't know if there are any questions. Victoria, you're going to share a little bit about our vision statement. Is there anything anyone wants to say before we go into that? And if not, Victoria, you can go ahead and.
Okay, are you gonna?
Yeah. I'm going to share screen here just a second.
Well, while Dottie is saying that, I just want to, first of all, Dottie, ask you, thank you for the question that you asked, what brings you here, and for the responses. I know some of you, and the sense that I got from your responses, this is not a new quest to know yourself and to know how you can benefit society. So I'm just so glad to see you here, and I really honor your heart and know that it's been a lifelong quest to truly know myself and to know, how do we create a sustainable, how do we create a compassionate world that's amazing, that's thriving, and that is sustainable. So I've been telling my classes, we need to promote global heartwarming, but how do you do that? So let me just go over the vision statement, which I love, because in many ways, Be Present is already fulfilling this. And so many vision statements I've seen are just kind of feel like blah, blah. But this one, I really see it happening. So I want to read it out loud with inflection so I can emphasize the parts that really mean something to me, and then just go back and say a little bit about it. So please, you can certainly follow along with me as I read it. We are a diverse network of people willing to risk being different with one another, our families, communities, workplaces, and organizations. We are committed to a process that we call the Be Present Empowerment Model that builds personal and community well-being on the strength of self-knowledge rather than on the distress of oppression. Because we believe that enduring progressive change begins with and is sustained by persistent personal growth, we bring to people a model for personal and organizational effectiveness, which replaces silence with information, replaces assumptions with a diversity of insights, and powerlessness with a sense of personal responsibility. So that says so much to me. And so it might be say something different to everybody else and be present. But I love the diversity, just acknowledging that even twins from the same family and the same culture are going to be diverse, because one is going to see the world and think about things probably a little differently from the other. I love the word network, because Be Present is really always looking for people and other organizations to partner with. The point is to share this capacity to relate with each other in authentic, open, constructive ways. And then that part about being willing to risk being different with one another. Speaking personally, it's scary. It's been scary for me. And so one big thing in Be Present is to be more willing to be out loud, to risk being out loud, to risk saying what I'm really thinking and feeling, to risk people thinking, oh, that's silly, or that won't work, or you have another option, but just to risk to get my voice in there. And so that's a huge thing, especially in my family, where there are patterns where it hasn't been safe to say what I really wanted or thought or felt. And then I really like also the focus on the family. I know for me, many times it was easier for me to be the person I wanted to be outside my family, professionally, or with friends. So this has really helped me with my relationships with my family. And the beautiful thing is that as I'm more who and how I want to be in an open and transparent way, it helps them be that way as well. In the second paragraph, I love the idea of commitment to a process that includes both my own personal growth and development and my capacity to build compassionate, thriving relationships. I love the inclusion of both personal and community well-being. And I love the focus on helping people know more of who they are, the light within, rather than focusing on blaming or shaming ourselves or any other aspect of or segment of the culture. As tempting as that has been for me, it's really nice to focus on bringing out my own light, my own compassion. And then I love that there's a recognition that external change has to begin within. And I think all the great spiritual teachers have said that. Christ, certainly, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. I found this great quote. It was just like what the person in the video said, it starts within. So even Gandhi had to come to a certain point of growth within himself and then embody that and then help ripple it out among other people. So I love that awareness of the persistent personal growth aspect. And incidentally, I just want to, maybe when I heard about this 18-month training that Lily had, I thought, oh, and I knew she had training in public health, right, Nancy? I think that was her master's, mine too. The best degree I could think of to try to save each individual in the world was public health education. But changing behavior is so hard, and it takes time and it takes repetition. And so, of course, you need an 18-month workshop where you come together every 3 months, you get, okay, this is the model, this is how you do it, you get support, and then you're assisted in the 3 months in between. So I thought, this lady understands what it takes to generate persistent personal growth. And I love the part about being mindful to use information instead of silence. And so for me to be out loud or to ask if somebody's quiet, can you tell me what's your picture of this situation? What are you believing. And to replace assumptions with the diversity of insights. Oh my gosh, in the last 2 weeks, I've noticed I made up a whole story about somebody's actions. That when I actually got information about it, it was completely different from the reality. And of course, my story was I was the victim and they were wrong. So it's just like, wow, this opens up so much to have the safety to just, well, what's actually going on. And then powerlessness with a sense of personal responsibility. For me, that means sometimes contemplating all that needs to change in the culture. It's just like, what can I do? But feeling like each time I'm a little different and I bring that in a relationship and the relationship gets a little different. Wow, that's how it happens. So this vision statement and the way that I see people walk the talk, not perfectly, none of us do it. But I see we honestly, the more conversations I have, we're always bringing in the model. And so I love that because there's just this consistent learning about myself and others. So it's a vision, Lily will say it's realized. And I see what she means. So thank you for being part of this also and being here in this way. I just want to say one more thing. When this has been such a great process for me to give this presentation and think about my whole life. And so I think my whole life, like maybe all of you, I've wanted to quote unquote save the world since I first saw Mighty Mouse so many years ago. And then, here I come to save the world. And then that morphed into Superman comic books. And I'm telling you this story because of the vision of having parents that understand this model, how different their children can be from the very beginning. So then, so Mighty Mouse morphed into Superman comic books, the strong hero that goes out and fights the bad guys. So one birthday, I have a younger sister, I gave her 10 Superman comic books as a present. And she was mad at me because she knew I liked them. And so it wasn't a genuine present. And so anyway, I was imagining it. What if my parents had known the model and they could have helped us talk it through? Where are you? And they also could have seeded the idea that saving the world isn't just some strong leader going out or some great person being the hero and conquering the bad guys, but it starts with you and your sister being able to hear each other and care about each other. And so it just would have been, I would have been raised with a whole different paradigm. So anyway, I really appreciate how Be Present includes children as full active members and even welcomes pets. So Milt, when you say you're connecting with all of life, I really see Be Present doing that. Honor even the voice of pets in a sense. So, okay, I'm gonna lead this on to Lauri.
Except before we move on to the next piece, I wondered if anyone had any things that really jump out at them from this vision statement. Just give people a chance if you've got something that you want to.
Just use the hand raising icon at the bottom.
Yeah,
And
Mel.
see everybody, so you may have to just unmute yourself.
Milt has his, yeah.
Oops, you muted yourself again. You muted yourself again, Milt.
No, I never unmuted.
Okay.
I had to get myself in gallery. I couldn't see my,
Yeah.
I guess I had the thing down below. So thank you very much, and everyone, for what you're giving. And I was thinking as you were talking, Victoria, about the last time you and I worked together, which was a lot of years ago, on a peace conference that was run by some very hierarchical white guys. And it was a disaster, I thought, from my perspective. And I was thinking, I would really like to get back together with you, maybe have lunch or something someday soon. Because I think that that what you're doing in being present is like integrally important, but it's necessary but not sufficient, I guess is the way I would say it. There are other perspectives of being present, which do include things like you just mentioned, of being all life. So they're not as anthropocentric. And I think that's very important. There are other cultures who blend apparent opposites much better than we do in our culture. That's what you're struggling with in virtually what everyone said, is blending apparent opposites. And I'd like to just sit down and talk about that, because I think what you're doing at a personal level is absolutely key. But I think we have to understand, maybe being present would be a good thing. I'll put in the text box, if you'd like, a link to Lauri Merkuliev's Being Present. And his is about coming up with that we live in this total field of awareness, and we are connecting at levels far differently than we understand in our culture, but they're there. And their cultures wouldn't survive for millennia as they have without understanding that. So I think there's a different context, and there's a need for blending. And that's another thing that I found in working with the indigenous people. If they do know how to blend apparent opposites, and they do it through, interestingly, through ceremony. And the ceremony, I believe, is built around the question, what brings life? Not just in the physical sense, but what brings life to the process? You know, how does it become an emergent process that just keeps taking you to better and better places? So anyway, if you'd like, let's set a date and go have lunch together and see how this all fits together.
I would love that. And, I'm in a circle with Yael, and the quality of communication we have in that circle is so like be present. So I think it all works together. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Is that with Yael Seligman, Merkuliev's wife?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect connection. So
Yeah.
let's get together offline and set a date. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So maybe we'll take the two questions that are up there now, and then move on. I think Mary, it's hard to tell who was actually next because, of course, I can only see a strip of people. I think it was Mary and then Ron. Is that true? Yeah.
So I'm unmuted, I'm assuming. I can't see. But thank you, Victoria. I love vision statement. And I particularly liked the part where you build on the strength of self-knowledge. I don't know why that's the one that hit me. I'm doing some work around money, with the difference being self-knowledge and self-interest. And it's potent. So I loved seeing that. But on the humorous side, when I hear I come to save the day, I think of Andy Kaufman. I don't know if you remember when he lip synced to the Mighty Mouse. Anyway, it was really good. It makes me laugh every time I think about it. So I liked the reference. Thank you.
Humor is good. Be Present really believes in abundant laughter and creativity and play. It really helps.
Thank you.
Ron, do you want to share something? You're on mute still.
Thank you. I'm on this journey also, and the mission statement so well articulates it, and it's nice to read that, and particularly to have Victoria go back through and speak to the things that resonate with her directly in her own experience. It just made me flash on something that happened to me recently, and take the risk of being different from one another. And I was within a conversation of a group of people, and I was finding myself not being present and blending in, and I said something that wasn't who I authentically am now, which I'm still learning how to do. And I actually before that group left, I found the courage to speak up and say to them that, I said something earlier and I don't know who that was that said that because it sure wasn't me. Here's how I really feel. And it was odd and strange and uncomfortable and wonderful all at the same time. So I thank you. And yeah, it's a journey and a process indeed, isn't it? Something you don't get in a weekend.
Yeah. Oh, true.
Thank you. That's a perfect example, Ron. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll have time for more questions later. I did want to say that this vision statement was written, everything in Be Present is done collaboratively, where everyone's voice is welcomed. And the women and girls came together for a weekend. There were also a few that were on the phone just back before Zoom, bringing in their wisdom from it. And at the end of the weekend, this thing was exactly the same as is used now, except it said women instead of people. That's the only change that's been made in the last 31 years. And it is a beautiful vision statement. So thank you again, Victoria.
Well, thank you, Nancy, for adding that in. I love co-presenting. So if I forget something, somebody else will bring it in. So Lauri, I think you're up. Huh?
Oops, you're on mute though.
Thanks, Nancy. What we've all been talking about is the Be Present empowerment model, which is, and we are a community of practice. It's finding opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities to be with the other people in the community that are trying to do the same thing, trying to work the model so that certain things can happen. I wanted to say too that Mary was talking about money issues, and we some of us in Be Present are part of a 18-month training about money and our relationship with money. So it's interesting that was brought up. It's a biggie. But we work through things like that and issues like that by working the model and continuing to show up. The model, there are 3 realms to the model. The first realm is knowing ourselves outside the distress of oppression. And when I first heard that, it just really baffled me. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand how I would fit in because I wasn't oppressed. There was no such thing as inside or outside my my oppression, because I was white. I never really lacked for anything. And I've come to learn what that means for me. My oppression is anything that's, even things that I've put on myself along the way that stifle myself or cause me to back away from opportunities to have a voice or be who I am. I don't like usually being around large groups of people. So the first realm is knowing ourselves outside the distress of oppression, which is learning who we are inside of ourselves, not caught up in a reaction that we're having because of something that happened to us or because somebody reminds us of somebody else. Because in order to really move to the second step, we have to know who we are outside of all that distress. Listen. Hey, Nancy, could you put the thing up, please? Second realm is that we learn to listen in a conscious and present state. And that it's so important to know who we are outside of anything else anybody's put on us or where we're not being our authentic self, because when we listen to others, we need to be able to recognize when something from our past or other relationship or something in us is getting in the way. For example, I realized early on that even though I've been a mediator, I've worked in the legal system and other systems for my whole adult career. And what was I going to say? So I thought I knew everything about listening and all that, but what I realized first early on was that when I'm listening to somebody else, there are so many times that I'm not listening because my head is busy figuring out if I have a similar story, how that relates to me, and what I'm going to say next. And that takes up all the space in my mind and heart and keeps me from really listening with my complete conscious and present state. That's where living in the present comes to be, because I mean, so many philosophers and people have understood the only moment that is real is right now. So know ourselves right now, then we are clear to be able to fully listen in the moment to someone else. And then that leads to the third realm, which is when we know ourselves outside the distress of oppression, and that is a work in progress. And we're able to listen to others in a conscious and present state. What we'll find is that build effective relationships and sustain true alliances, that kind of happens as a natural result of living in the first two realms. And so and then they all work together. I mean, it's not like you do step one and then you do step two and then you do step three. They all happen at the same time. They make a whole, and it's really incredible. Dottie, if you could play the second piece of the training video, that would be lovely. This will tell us a little bit about the second realm.
Between us. And I find this work so precious, especially on getting it. I'm getting the.
So like the whole thing about how I keep like not speaking up fully and like catching myself quicker, like seeing the pattern, just catching myself quicker. I want that to be in the moment, faster and faster. To be present like the first time. But you know what? Hey, I get to forgive myself.
How can I like truthfully and honestly like be connected to other people around me when I have like going through my head? It feels like dirty. Like there's me and then this dirt and then the other person instead of like me and the other person, nothing, between us.
And I find this work so precious, especially on getting it. I'm getting this, slow it down.
And you keep saying, let's slow it down.
It's not invalidating the story. It's not invalidating what the head is saying. It's just saying, slow it down, because we want to hear. We want to hear from this part of you that you're skipping right by, because it doesn't feel safe for you to say that. So you skip by it. And our work is say, whoa, it's safe here. We're going to slow this down.
You don't have to have the magic of knowing how to do anything but saying, okay. And even if I turn my head and I turn back, it's another moment that I'm waiting for. It doesn't mean you don't have information, but you don't try to already predict the information in the moment. You risk not knowing.
I'm willing to take the risk.
and this is where it gets hard around this process, but it's a practice place. When I look at you, I see your eyes, I see your physical face, I know what your name is. I know if I think about the history and all that, but this moment, I see nothing but this moment. I'm waiting for a new set of knowing in this moment.
That's an amazing thing.
Do y'all understand what I'm saying?
So like when you know yourself outside the stress of oppression, you move into the place in these rooms and outside the room to listen to others in a conscious and present state. Each and every person gets to have their own movement. That's what's so hard about this work. Because you really do have to wait, and you cannot judge them on what you think they should say or what you thought they meant, but you have to really be in the compassion and the understanding of what they actually said out their mouth. And then you can question that until you can get more clarity and then help them be able to put more words so we can actually make sure that is what they actually trying to say. Remember, that's a hard thing to use the language that we have to communicate to the world spirit. The language is imperfect. It's hard to use it.
And so I want to talk about this, the interconnectedness part. Because this is a little like a dance, right? Like there's really, the truth is I started this process over here. I started this process in rooms like this, listening to people without much to say. I didn't have any idea really who I was, but I just kept listening. And when I would get triggered, I would notice it, and then I'd keep listening. So this interesting thing, I know the arrows look like they're going in one direction, but I kind of think of them as going back and forth. Because as I'm listening to you, oh, wow, that is in me. Okay, let me check that out. Is that why we're connected? I don't want to be connected around pain. Let me make sure I know who I am. Now let me listen. Oh, okay, now we can connect. So there's a way that the small groups give us a chance to not only listen to others and support others in knowing more and more who they are, for real, right? Their eggs. But it gives you a chance, or it gives me a chance, through that listening to know me. And the more I know me, and the more you're clear who you are, when we get together, it's real.
So we, I think before we move on, does anybody have something they'd like to share or a question about the three realms of the model?
I wanted to share one thing that came to me in listening to the video, which is one of the complexity or I won't even put it at complexity. One of the hard things for me in knowing myself outside the distress of oppression is there's a place where I don't know. So I know what I've always done before. I know what I've been told. I know those voices of judgment in my head. I know those things really well. But if I'm trying to make a different choice, that means I have to stand in a moment where I don't know. And I hate not knowing. I think those of us who have been on these kind of journeys, really working the way we've been working, that place of not knowing is terrifying. And that's really, what does it mean to stay in those places of not knowing until something else emerges? I have almost a sensation in my head as if, because I think of myself as a constellation thinker, so I see the connections between all these kind of things. In those moments I don't know, it all collapses into a mass and I can't think of anything. I really don't know anything. So part of the process to actually know who I am outside of that which has felt so normal and so right and keeps me safe, but actually doesn't, to do something different, I've got to go through that place of not knowing. And that's one of the places where the risk to even say, I don't know, or even I'm scared spitless and I've forgotten everything I know. I've got myself in terrible trouble, as in lying, because I couldn't just say, I don't know. I am freaked out and I don't know. So I'm feeling the don't know piece and sort of honoring that, what it takes. So for me, that's a big part of the knowing myself, of the process of learning to know myself outside of all of that.
Thank you, Nancy. I wanted to, I noticed, Cosette, Larry, that you came on since we first started talking, and you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself. I'm Lauri, and Nancy and Victoria are here talking. So I just wanted to give you a chance to speak up if you want to.
Thank you, Lauri. Can everybody hear me? Okay, because I have my headphones on and sometimes they don't quite do what I would like for them to do. First of all, I'd like to thank Victoria for the gracious invitation to come to this. She has been singing the praises of this particular practice, organization, group for, I want to say, a couple years to me. And I value Victoria tremendously. And I have an extensively busy schedule like many people, but I noticed she was always very repetitive about it. And I got to thinking, if Victoria keeps bringing this up to me, and I know how much I adore Victoria, there must be some level of quality to this. I need to make some space. And it's interesting that I just said I need to make some space because I'm in Columbus, Georgia. So I'm 3 hours ahead of the Pacific Northwest or the West Coast.
Yes.
So it is 11:16 at night here. And this particular session happened to have landed on a Saturday that I work. I work 4 Saturdays out of a year remotely at a university. And of all the Saturdays, I sound like somebody about to say some joke or some weird story. Of all the Saturdays that could take place, she had to walk into my life on this Saturday. And when I got off of work tonight, I was really tired and I had messaged Victoria a voicemail that, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so exhausted. I'm gonna need to probably go to bed and not be able to. And she had told me about the Saturday one, the traditional Saturday ones, like at I think like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, her time. And I mentioned, well, if you can send me some more information about those. And I laid my head down and I went to bed. And I'm gonna be open. I got up to go pee. And I looked at the time and I said, oh, they're still at it. And I was like, well, I'm gonna come and listen. And for the small amount of time that I've been here already, I'm kind of like, whoa. And I mean, I'm seriously like, whoa, not like, whoa, to sound savvy and on the edge of innovation. No, I'm like, whoa, because this knowing yourself outside of oppression and really listening, I really thought I was doing that all along, and maybe to some extent. Victoria's not because she knows me. We've been friends for goodness. God, Victoria, what, at least 17 years? At least. So, because Bond is 23 and he's my youngest. So, God, we've been together a long time. And so I've always thought that I was really doing it. And not to say that I wasn't to some extent, but just from what I've gathered, just in the small amount of listening and watching the video, I can see why Victoria has been constantly saying, and this be present. And it's like the title is Be Present. Okay, that's obvious. It's telling you to be present. But as many times as she's told me, be present. I think it would be great for you to come and see about. But I see just from the small amount that it really means to be present. It means what the title is, and that's really kind of got me right now. Like, oh my goodness, this is more than I expected. So Victoria, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to meet you all through Zoom, and I am going to now go ahead and close out my mic so I can listen some more. But definitely there's something to this. And I don't think it's cookie cutter or manufactured. I've dealt with a lot of those type of things where everybody wants to get in their chakras and everything, but they don't really know how to get in their chakras, and you done paid $700 for people that don't really know how to get in the dead gum chakras. And it's nothing like that. I could tell already there's something different about this. So Victoria, thank you for the invitation. And I like to thank my ancestors and spirits that told me go pee. So,
Thank you so much, Cosette. Your presence here is a gift. It was really great to hear you share. Thank you. And I do hope we see you again. Yeah.
And I just want to say, oh my gosh, you make me cry, Coco, because if there's anyone who has worked so hard to know who you truly are and to be that in the moment instead of what has happened to you and how you've been treated, it's you. And so for you to feel this way, for you to be able to pick up on this is very meaningful to me. Thank you. I wish I could tell you more about this phenomenal woman, but anyway, I'm so glad you came. Thank you. And for your words. Thank you.
We would like to share a little bit about what the impact of Be Present has been in our lives. Do you prefer to be called Coco or Cosette? What is your, it just says Cosette on your little box there.
I prefer Coco.
Okay.
But
okay, great. Thanks. Well, Coco, you made it easy to move on to the next part. For me, I was, I wanted so badly for certain things that just never seemed like they would be a part of my life. I live in a part of the state that is not the most, it's a very conservative area, and it's taken a long time to meet like-minded people, and I have usually just a friend or two, but I have been embraced by this community. It is a community that it's all about supporting each other through support groups and all the other gatherings that we have, so that we can become the leaders, the social justice leaders that we want to be able to really move clearly and purposefully through our lives. And I had suffered just so much trauma and loss. I was just pretty much done with everything. And then when I started, a little by little over the last 6 years, I have just being aware of my listening, like to my daughter, especially my daughter, who told me for years, Mom, I just need to talk. I'm not asking for solutions. I don't need advice. I don't need suggestions. I just And it took me so long, but Be Present helped me really hear what she was saying. And so I've just worked really hard on listening in the way people listen to me. I mean, it's so nice because it's the model is modeled all over the place through everything that we see and experience with each other. And our relationship has changed dramatically in that I can tell she feels she's a lot more relaxed about sharing with me. And she's a lot more, I don't know, things have just really changed. I'm a better listener, and I'm responding instead of reacting to what she has to say. There have been changes in my marriage for the better, and just my ability to move forward in my life. I like to say Be Present has been a catalyst for me. It's been a catalyst to self-growth, and all three realms of the model are active in my life now. And I would have never felt like this or had this much self-respect if I hadn't been involved with Be Present. I'm really excited to see where it takes me from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauri. I appreciate that. For me, Be Present it's just kind of amazing for me. This, again, doing this presentation, oh wow, there's that thread and that thread and that thread that just kind of comes together. So I grew up in the South. I can actually remember just this image of seeing colored water fountain and white. So just racism was such a painful thing, but you know, what do I do about that? And then in high school, I had to give a speech at graduation, and my theme was, and my mom and I didn't see eye to eye on the state of my room, which is probably not unusual. But for some reason, my speech was about, don't complain about the orderliness of the house unless your own room is in order, which I see as don't complain about the rest of the world unless I'm aligned and doing what I should do. But so I had that understanding, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then at the end of college, I wrote this paper where I realized that everything I thought was me was pretty much just what I'd been socialized or conditioned to think and see. And I was angry. But how do I deprogram myself? And I wrote this paper called Transcending the Official BS, because I was too proper to say bullshit, which even now, if I say it, I feel embarrassed. But how do I do that? How do I do that? And so just, and then Maslow's thing about being self-actualized. Yeah, I want to be self-actualized, or whatever term, self-realized, but how do you do that? And so then I'm trying to teach my students how to change in the moment in their communication. And I would have them write a script of an interaction, how it usually goes with the thinking and the feeling, so they could slow down and look at what was happening and then write a better script. And I think that's a good activity, but again, how could I do that? I didn't slow down enough to do that for myself enough. So what Be Present has really given me is a practice and the encouragement, the ongoing, ever-present encouragement to slow down, see what's happening inside, and to hold me in non-judgment and in love and give the space. I'm uncomfortable saying too much, like right now, but to just let my voice be heard. So what I really appreciate about Be Present is the community of people who are willing to risk being different and really care about my doing that. And in the support group, Darlene, you asked about the support group. So that's where you come together and there's just this space. You take turns to just allowing someone to, I had this twinge with my family member or with myself, or creating this presentation where I felt all this anxiety. And so what's that about? And just be able to speak. And then they're not there to fix me or to advise me or to say, yeah, I know what you mean. They're there to just help me continue to explore that. So in that way, I can transcend the official BS and I can discover more of who I really am and separate out how I've been conditioned to be. And so just one quick example of this happening in process of doing the work, quote unquote, of being president. So I was working with another, a white man, a very privileged white man, a very intelligent and accomplished white man. And we were collaborating to do a presentation on Hanukkah because Be Present honors all the holidays, the seasons of light. And so he and I we had come up with this order of our presentation, and then I wanted to change it. So he was willing, but then I said, well, are you sure it's okay with you? And he just kind of, the patriarchy, he kind of called me on. He says, why don't you, I said it was okay. Why don't you trust that? And I just, this habit of deferring. I really need approval here. So anyway, it was just, it was a moment of, I was so grateful that he would call me on it and that I could see it. And did it go away? I've just become more conscious. So anyway, I'm so grateful for Be Present and for the people that are doing the same thing and will help me do it, and the chance to practice it, because yeah, I kind of know what to do, but how do I exactly do it? Like, when Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see. Okay, what exactly is that change? And how do I do it? And I was thinking about, I think John Lewis with Martin Luther King, they had a training for people to learn how to be nonviolent, because it's not an easy change. And they supported each other and they practiced it. And I see Be Present is offering that opportunity. I'll stop talking now. I'll let Nancy talk.
Well, for me, I have been searching for organizations that actually did what they said. Like, that would actually, they have these beautiful missions, the organizations have this great mission statement, these great vision statement. They sound so good. They do wonderful things. And then they don't actually line up with, particularly internally, like within their own staff or within their own people, with what they're actually talking about. And I have been in so many places of deep disappointment where organizations with such beautiful heart crashes and burns when the first conflict hits. And so I've looked in the churches, I've looked in different organizations, and I've been searching. I've really been searching. So when I came to Be Present, that's why I said I came for a weekend. I just wanted to learn, how do I just be okay with myself and whatever. I don't know what I thought I was going to do in a weekend, but anyway, that's what I thought. And actually, that's a pretty cultural thing. You got an issue, you learn your little thing, then you go and you just do it. I mean, that was pretty logical thing in this culture to think that was possible. But what I have found in Be Present is that complete alignment between the vision and the mission and the structure and what we're teaching is actually how we are with each other all the time. And the thing that is true in Be Present is really every single one of us is a leader. So we're a leader in a community of leaders. But in the expectation of that is that I need to show up with what I'm seeing. That's my responsibility. Now, that freaks me out. I like to lead in places where I'm really confident, but there are also times when I'm not very confident, or I really would prefer somebody else make the suggestion because I don't want to sound like an idiot if it's wrong. There's a lot of self-judgment in me. So what it means to actually be in that kind of alignment, which requires me with that personal responsibility to show up in my full leadership and really then listen in the collaboration with everyone else who's showing up in their leadership. There's something that's a checks and balances that I haven't seen very many places. So I'm always going for that alignment. And the other piece about Be Present that's really wonderful is that I actually went into 2 different organizations at the same time, and the other one was beautiful and hit a crisis, and I was freaked out because I thought there were going to be another one that was going to crash and burn. But part of Be Present's mission is to support other organizations as well as other people to be who they are, and to really how to have those hard conversations so they can continue. So that's really the partnership that's developed between 2 different organizations is actually the fruit of what the trailblazing that Lauri was talking about, the 18-month, is what does it mean to collaborate, not just with individuals as leaders, but also organizations, so that the Be Present is really a movement supporting the social justice movement. So how do we really support each other in those places to keep that alignment really clear? So that's one of the places that kept me, because I've been searching for that. That's what I wanted. The other thing that's really important for me that I've really found in Be Present is that, what we know is that access to resources like money, as well as other resources and even trainings and all those kind of things in this culture has to do with who's got the money. If you have the money, you can go to something. If you don't have the money, you might be able to get a couple scholarships. Other than that, you can't go. The access to those resources is a serious problem in this culture. And one of the things Be Present is really clear about is we need the diversity in everything that we do, because we need that. That's if we're going to actually solve the problems of the world, we've got to be able to come together in the diversity. So what do you do with the resources? Because typically, if you're going to pay for things, people need to pay for it. So if everyone's going to have access and not everyone has the funds to do that, how do you do that? And Be Present from the very beginning. So for 40 years, Be Present has figured out when they say, do not let money be a barrier to your attending this training or this program or whatever. We had to come up with ways to do that, because people still need it. This is a world that works in money. That's just real. We're going to rent a site, including Earthrise. You got to pay for the site. You got to pay for the food, and also there's staff. You need the paying for the training or the leadership there. So one of the things in Be Present is it's all of our responsibility to find the funds to make sure that all of us can be there. So those of us who have more access, that would be me, who have more access to, when I'm going to something, I pay higher than what the cost is. Not because I'm helping out those poor folks who can't come. It's because it's a matter of justice for me. That if we want everybody to be there, we've got to figure out a way for money to be there to do what we need to do. So part of it is like for registration fees, really, here's a sliding scale. And also we're all going to fundraise, because it's rarely enough money just in the registration. So it's how do we all take responsibility to fundraise to make sure we can all be there? It's a complete shift in how we think about who deserves to be there, who's being helped to be there, who deserves to be there. So the money piece has been such a critical piece all along, with the Black women starting, but all the way along. How do we manifest a truly diverse group, cross-economic, cross-race, cross-everything, and still be able to function, to be able to thrive? Because also, we all know also those nonprofit organizations where you pay your staff a pittance, you're doing economic justice or whatever kind of justice you're doing, and then you're shortchanging your employees in the name of justice. That's not fair. That's also part of a crazy making financial. So I personally don't like fundraising. and I love justice and access. So part of that's really where the work that I've been doing, which is with the vision-based social change fund development team, which is we know that philanthropy can take the lead in social justice, and that how you follow your values and the mission of what you're trying to do in the name of social justice and open up those places that we all know are so unjust in the culture, in the organizations, in how we do things. That's part of a rich part of the work of Be Present. It's also why the whole organization, the whole network is involved in fundraising together, because it's part of the justice movement. It's a central part of the justice movement. So for me, that intersection of justice and spirit and money, that is what my awakening was to 40 years ago, actually. And I found it, how to do that, and be able to be a part of a team doing that and Be Present. So that's one of the places of the reason I really stay. Yeah, it's quite an undertaking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Should we have a little chance for a few questions? But then we want to tell just a little bit. Oh, good. How about Tom or Ron? Yeah.
Yeah. What good is it if the people who are affected can't have a voice and a seat at the table? So I'm just resonating with what you just said and being in alignment with, it's so good to hear that. And that's enough to say for now.
Thank you, Ron. That was so great. Sorry, another thing that I really love about Be Present is it's a nonprofit, but it's a whole different way of being a nonprofit and I've had some terrible experiences with nonprofits, this hierarchical structure and the lack of communication in all directions and from all people. So Be Present is so different. And so I really appreciate you calling that out, Ron. Yeah. So the lack of voice, the lack of communication, and Be Present really excels in hearing as many voices as possible in all directions. Thank you.
Even with board meetings and committee meetings and all the stuff that goes on in Be Present, anybody's welcome to anything. There are no like pre-board meetings before the real board meeting where the decisions are made. It really is collaborative and it really is transparent, and we're all welcome to show up at any gathering or event. So I think that's really different from what I have traditionally been used to.
Coco?
Thank you, Nancy. I just want to mention, see if I can take my hand down. How do you, okay, lower hand. That one of the things that is resonating with me listening to you all is that I don't hear or see the idea of the big red cape. And what I mean by the big red cape is more of a focus on being the hero or shero versus allowing for real collective unity and allowing for space for people to be able to really just have a concentration on themselves and, sounding like a cliche perhaps, their why, if you will. Heard so much about know your why. Yeah, and I just like that what I'm hearing is not the big red cape, like we're here to conquer and fix and blah, 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 blah. And all you got to do is just pay attention to what we're saying and how we're saying it. And this program we've got right here, I don't feel that. And I'm kind of impressed by that. That does not, I don't feel an ego. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't feel a presence of ego, which is amazing to me. So I just wanted to share that. I don't feel the big red cape of the ego in your conversation.
And one of the things about the Big Red Cape too is it really is a power. It's a complete power over. I mean, it is really the structure of the world put into saving the world. Or I'll help you people because you don't know how to do it and I do. That kind of place, which is it's part of what we're trying to shift. And it's easy to get into it, though. You're right. It's easy for organizations to get into that one leader kind of thing, as opposed to we're all leaders. Yeah. Yeah. Mary?
Yeah, well, Nancy, I just want to say how intrigued I am by how you found, what was it, the intersection of justice, spirit, and money, because that's it's an amazing concept, and I'd love to hear more about it at another time. But I really do resonate with the with social work. It's the early message that we get is virtue is its own reward, and yet people have to make a living. So how do we do that, and how do we make it? And the way that you presented you paying more was a form of social justice. It really takes it out of that economic realm, and I loved it, just loved it. So thank you. Inspiring that it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Ron?
Just quickly, I know that Milt and I are both very interested in Indigenous issues, historic as well as contemporary, and spiritual as well as practical. And one of the things, the lessons that we're all beginning to learn through media now and news is, the well-meaning idea of the boarding schools. There were some people who were truly well-meaning, but nobody asked the people involved, and they're still fighting to have sovereign and control over foster children and things like that. And so Milt and I both are very interested in that sort of thing in different paths, but still we are. And this is an extension of that same kind of priority.
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, I'm thinking that I should share a few of the different places you can go to. I know Dottie, go ahead. Do you want to say something first, Dottie?
I can say it at the end. Go ahead.
Okay. And Dottie's going to be sending out some more of this information, so I'm just going to touch on just some of the things that are happening, both for information that you might want to come, and also for me, I find it just really inspiring to know different things are happening in the world that really are part of the change. So I'm sharing it in both of those realms. But one is the different ways of support to kind of learn more about the model, get a chance to practice it in a place that's free, and you can come or not come. I mean, it's one of those, you can attend when it works for you, which we had this morning. Coco, you were alluding to the time is a better time. It's the monthly developers meetings, which is really where we work the model and also support people who are interested in being in a support group or also learning how to grow your support group. The dates, Dottie's going to send those dates out or when our next ones are, that anyone's welcome to come at any time to learn a little bit more about that. They're 3-hour meetings. And actually, we're going to be having one, but most of you are not even here. I was thinking all of you are Pacific Northwest. That's not true. We're kind of spread all over the place. I was going to say we're having one that's going to be a face-to-face. The other is because I said this is the 40th anniversary of this work starting with Black women, and Black women with a vision of what it meant to have a world that included everybody and honoring of everybody's leadership, which is just, right now, often what happens is, it was a white man, okay, let's go to the Black leadership. So that's great. But what Be Present has done is let's go to us all being in there, but we're all responsible for what does it mean to be outside of the injustice that's in the culture and in us, and how do we support each other in doing that? in July, they're going to be having a retreat for Black women and girls, open to anybody who's had no experience or 40 years experience. It'll be for a weekend. It's called the 40th Anniversary of Black and Female, What's the Reality? That was the name of the workshop that happened 40 years ago. It's a celebration and training honoring Black women's leadership in building inclusive movements for social justice. I still, every time I think about that, it's just the deep gratitude that I was thought about and am included fully in this organization that started 40 years ago with Black women. So we're in the, the planning, the fundraising, all of that for that training that's going to be happening. That's open for Black women and girls, and also the gender. I don't know exactly what the right language would be, but people who identify as female and women and girls are welcome to come to that. Black. There also, what Lauri was talking about is what's called the Trailblazing Institute Conference. We're almost at the end of our 18-month training. We just have one more session, and then we open it up for a conference, which is going to be in October. And what we're doing there is we're working at creating and sustaining inner transformation, partnership, and social justice. So we've been in a very deep partnership with these two organizations and blending our different practices, the Be Present model, wisdom practices, those more contemplative kind of practices, meditation, that kind of thing, and money practices. So that is also an open possibility if anyone wants to come to that. And then in November will be our 40th celebration time for both a board meeting, and as Lauri said, our board meetings are open to anybody. If you want to get a taste for a different way of what a board meeting looks like, when staff and board and anyone in the network are welcome to be and welcome together, that's what that is. And there'll also be a training and celebration. And we're going to be, Dottie will also send out our contact information for the three of us. So if you have other questions or continue some conversations, feel free to reach out to us. Deep appreciation for being invited to be here and grateful for the work. Like I said, it does my heart good to know how many people are doing incredible work in the world for this transformation that we're looking for. And IONS is definitely one of them. And you all have been meeting for 18 years, or a long time. So deep gratitude.
And our website is bepresent.org. And Dottie, that'll be on the information that Dottie sends out. It's not bepresent.com. That's totally something else. Bepresent.org.
Thank you.
I did correct that in the reminder notice.
Thank you.
I put it at the top. And I'll put it in the next email too, the one when I send out the video.
Thank you.
So is that,
yes.
Does anybody have any other questions or anything you'd like to, or comments you'd like to have? We have about 9 more minutes. So if you have a comment or a question, fire away. No? Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, oh, Darlene?
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe this is something that you're going to send out after the meeting, is how do we find local support groups where we can meet in person and have a face-to-face interaction with people?
That's a great question. And when I started, I was in Klamath Falls, Oregon. There was nobody, nobody around. So one of the things that we do in the leadership development meetings is we do talk about what it takes to form one, and what do you look for, that kind of stuff. So there's more information if you can come to a leadership development meeting. And also because of Zoom, like actually my current support group, and we've met for maybe 12 years or something, we don't live in the same place. So we always meet on Zoom. Times before, a couple of us got together and somebody else was at a distance. So the benefit of COVID was that it really taught how to really connect at a distance. But it is lovely to have someone close by. I mean, there really is nice about being able to reach out and touch somebody. And that's part of what we really work with in those leadership development meetings. So look at my recommendation would be to look at what Dottie sends and come to one of those. You can come to ours. There's also one that's offered by the New York, New Jersey. And since it doesn't matter where you are, you can go to that one also. But yeah, there's a lot of support for getting a support group. Yeah. And it's nice to try it with friends. And the truth is, I went through a lot of different folks who really wanted to do it, and then they didn't actually want to meet monthly, and they didn't actually want to use the model, and they didn't, you know, how it is. So it just the perseverance to keep, I knew what I wanted and what I was looking for, and I found it. It just takes a little while sometimes, particularly when you're off. I don't remember where you're living.
Cypress, California.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So do
Yeah.
you have a California regional group?
You do. They're in the Bay Area though. And you're not Bay Area, are you? Yeah.
LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go, Darlene.
Move to San Francisco. I know.
Oh, you could start one in LA.
Oh, thanks.
And really the regions start because people are interested and get training, and that's where they live. And so that's how we started, because I was searching and I wanted other people around, you know? So, yeah, it can happen.
You.
Definitely happen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm going to say that, I really appreciate your presentation. I was one of those people that Victoria talked about in the original support group, and I didn't have a clue what we were really doing. So it didn't really catch on with me. And I looked at some of the videos and it still didn't quite make sense. So this was really great. You guys did a fabulous job explaining it and sharing what the experience was for you. Yes, whoever's clapping, good on you. That's for sure. The other thing I'm saying is that this model and the practice and the spreading of this practice and bringing people into it, I think is so important for where we're headed, because this is an inside job. This transformation in consciousness has to happen from here out. You know, all these structures that we've created for ourselves that are past their sell-by date, you know, our systems and our economic system and our school system, and all of those are all past their sell-by date because we created them with the consciousness that we were then. And we're moving into something totally new. And this whole thing about the hierarchy and somebody being in charge is going away. And what has to replace it is each of us showing up as leaders. So I loved what you said about we're all leaders, because that's what it's going to take, is all of us showing up and being responsible and being conscious of what we are and how we're expressing and how we're relating for what's coming. And so I just really appreciate what you're doing. It makes me cry. So anyway, thank you very much.
That's so well said, Dottie. Thank you. So well said.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate this. And we'll put this out on YouTube, and I'll send the video out to you and Cosette. So Victoria, will you forward it to Coco so she gets it too, so she can hear the part that she missed. Okay,
so thank you all who came.
I'm going to put the view back on the gallery. So if anybody wants to say anything to say goodbye, and we'll close it down. So thank you all for coming, and see you next time.
Thank everyone.
It's been great. Victoria, we'll get together.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.